All right, let's do this. Okay. Drawing circles. All right, let's talk about this. Whenever you're drawing, whenever you're at this point when you're drawing, you always want to try and draw from your elbow or your shoulder. You'll often, so your arm is you're really thinking about, oh, I'm drawing from my elbow or my shoulder. You really, it's hard to draw circles with your wrist. If they're small circles, yes, but most of the time we're going to draw a little bit larger ones. So as I proceed here, I'm really trying to keep my wrist as straight as possible. All right, and I'm thinking of the circle as coming from my elbow. It's easier also for me to, when I'm drawing a circle, or a circle at this point, is to push it through versus pulling it. You see, going clockwise is harder to get a nice round circle versus going counterclockwise. I don't know why that is, but that motion seems to be a little bit easier versus going the opposite motion. Okay, so this is drawing in this one, that's drawing in that direction, and this is drawing in that direction. I like this process, that direction, much better. So one great way to warm up is to draw a circle and then draw more on your page. And just keep your mind thinking that you're drawing it from your elbow and not your wrist. You know, sometimes you've read possibly or heard about like relaxation, and they would say that you want to start with your feet and then kind of move up through your body. Well, same thing is when you're relaxing, you're putting your focus and you're thinking about your feet, or you're thinking about your fingertips, and you work through your body. Well, same thing when you're drawing like a circle, you want to really concentrate on your elbow. And just take a page and just practice drawing circles. And I usually start off drawing it light, and then my second pass I go a little bit darker, okay? So this is a great warm-up. Just trying to get consistent circles on your page. So let's use this. I'm going to use this big one for my basketball here. And the first line I'm going to use on my basketball is this equator. I'll change that color. This idea that this basketball is this circle, this sphere is being cut in half, okay? So let's try and envision that. And again, I'm pushing through. I'm pushing through this. All right, so that would be my first line that I'm making when I'm drawing this basketball. Let's pull through. Let's pull through the second one here. So this is going to come down below here and come out. All right, let's get this next one, and again, think of drawing from your elbow here, okay? Drawing from your elbow. All right, let's bring up another image here. An apple. All right, let's go ahead and do this again. I'm going to draw in a counterclockwise, and I'm just trying to get a sense of a sphere. First couple go-arounds are rather light. Let's draw another one down here. And I want to draw another one here. So, one thing I've already discussed is the equator. The equator is let's just say the equator is that part that divides a circle or a sphere right in half, okay? Another part that you have is the axis. The axis is like a post or something that would go. Do I have any way to demonstrate this? Nope, not with me. All right, this would be like if you had a round bit of clay and then you stuck a stick right down the center of that clay, that would all of a sudden become the axis. Okay, and you could use that we use that axis all the time for all kinds of types of measuring and things of that sort. So our sphere has an axis. So let's call this A and call this B. All right. So let's just make this axis go off to the right here, and we'll make this axis go off to the left. Again, I'm still keeping my hand nice and straight there. And let's put a little dot here. That dot would signify that this is the top of the sphere. You can't see that dot here because it's at the very tip top. So if this dot represents if I'm looking at A now, and if that dot represents the top, I could have my axis come out here like this. I'm going to do a little round knob here and just put an arrow point like this. See, that's going to help tell me that the top where the axis is and that I'm looking down at it. The bottom of that pole or that axis point is behind my my circle here, my sphere here. So I don't see the exit point. Okay, it's behind it. And let's go ahead and draw the equator on this here, on A. Okay, it's gonna be something like that. Let's go ahead and jump over to B now. Now this time, let's make the top of the sphere on the far side. On the far side of the sphere here. So we're going to show the underside because we are down below the sphere, looking up at it. So let's make our little point like this. It's going to stop right at the edge there because what we're looking at is the bottom. We're looking at the bottom of the sphere. So A is coming towards us and B is backwards from us. And let's draw that equator for B as well. So it's going to be in this direction. So looking at our apple here, we would say the top of the apple is where the stem is coming out. Okay, so in this case, we're kind of looking at like an A scenario where it's falling towards us. You see that? So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to call this C. All right, and let's put a line. Let's determine the axis of our apple there. So that's the axis. That's how it's leaning. Let's draw the top point. This is going to be the top point of our apple. And we can go ahead and add a stem there instead of the top part of the stem is just a little bit wider. Now, the top of an apple is concave. There's like a hole that's going into it. So we can't really see unless we look straight into it. We can't see where that edge is. So we're going to do something like this to signify that stem is going behind that. It's going down. And then we might do this shape on the far side to suggest that it's going down. All right, let's bring up something else now. Oh, this is a good one, especially early. All right. Nope, hold on here. All right, let's do this one. So let's start at the top, and let's just kind of draw a sphere. Let's do a little overlap here. Draw another sphere. And then let's draw another sphere. At the very bottom, let's draw a sense of an equator line coming just like that. This isn't quite an equator. We're shifting it down a little bit because this will end up being, and I've lost room here. I can't really make my cone, but we'll do something like that. So one of the concepts in drawing that we use all the time is overlap. Overlap is this idea where we have an object and then we draw another object behind it and we draw another object behind that. So you get a sense of depth by overlapping objects, and we use this all the time. Sometimes you'll hear me refer to a Y. Get your Y's and T's in place. Well, a Y and T would be something like this. Let me show you. If I just create this basic bean shape, you could see right over here how the top part of the bean is overlapping the bottom part. And this looks almost like a letter T. You see that? I could do the opposite. I could do the opposite like this. Now the bottom part of the bean is in front of the top part. So you could say that this looks like a Y. So this little teeny idea is just used over and over and over and over again in drawing. So the quicker you get this concept, this idea of overlap, you're going to use it to your advantage. You're going to purposely use it to give your pictures depth. Okay, so let's put that into place right now. So let's just say we'll call the top scoop A, B, and C. Okay, so let's start with A, and let's make sure that A is on top of B. You see that? And then let's make sure that B is on top of C. If you need to use your eraser to take some of those extra lines away, by all means. So now we can now we've got these three different layers set up. Let's go ahead and just add a little more detail and use our picture for reference. So over on A, let's just create this shape here so it just looks a little bit more like an ice cream cone. And now, for the first time, I'm actually switching over and drawing from my wrist because I'm getting a lot more detail here. So we're using overlap. Another drawing technique that we're going to use is surface lines. Surface lines describe the surface of a form. How would I use that? So I might add some curved lines there. You see they have a slight curve to them. And I might use some down here to describe that the form is circling in on itself. And I could even use them in here just a little bit. All right, let's get down to this next ice cream cone here. And I'm going to maybe circle that around a little bit. It doesn't look exactly like the picture, but that's okay. We just try and use pictures to inspire us. We don't have to copy them exactly all the time. Let's add some surface lines to that ice cream cone. And maybe same thing down here. We'll add some surface lines to this guy as well. All right, let's move on to C now, because he's the guy at the bottom of the stack here. All right, I'm going to add some surface lines here, maybe over there as well. Add a little ice cream falling down at the side there. When I make my marks, one thing I do is, and I do this traditionally, also digitally, is I'll push down, I'll pull up, push down, I'll pull up, push down, I pull up. This actually creates a nice line where you have a you're pushing in and you're pulling up, and so you get the edges of your line have a nice what's the word I'm looking? A nice taper to it. And as you look at a drawing overall, you'll see all your lines have a nice tail or a nice taper to them, and it makes your drawings have a sense of very lifeness to them. All right, last thing, let's just kind of quickly add some lines to our cone down here, and I'm just kind of doing it a slight circle. They don't have to be perfect. Just give a bit of a suggestion of what we're doing. All right, and there you go. There's a nice 3-scoop ice cream you just drew using spheres and cones, and we're gonna come back and discuss cones in more detail another day, but for right now, that should do it. All right, let's move on. I'll give you another. I'll take another sip of coffee and give you another 30 seconds to finish that off there. All right, look at this. Now we're talking. Now we're talking breakfast, right? Okay, let's try drawing this egg. Now this egg isn't quite sphere, it's oblong. So again, starting with your elbow, and I personally like to draw in a counterclockwise motion when it comes to this. And I'm gonna hold my pencil further back. Okay? So let's see how we do here. Drawing from my elbow when I'm doing that. Thinking elbow here. Our axis on our egg is straight up and down. Look at that. The egg does not lean to the right nor to the left. It's not leaning forward, and then it's not leaning back. It's straight up and down. So then our shell, look at our shell here. It's cracked, but if it wraps around the egg. So what we want to do is we want to think of this almost as we want to think of it as uncracked to begin with. See that? That's going to give me, by starting off with this crack and wrapping it around, it's going to really add to the dimension of this egg. If it wasn't for that shell, the egg would be extremely flat. So I've put a point here. This will be where my first crack is, and I'm just going to kind of follow along this guide as I come around the edge there. And then when you get to the edge of the egg, just push that off slightly to the edge, off the edge of the hard-boiled egg there. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of thickness. You see how I did that? This will give, this is a slight exaggeration in what the picture shows, but that's okay because, you know, we're telling a story here. We're telling a story, and we're saying this egg has this shell and it's thick, and I want people to know that. All right, let's continue the rest of our shell here. It comes around here and then comes to the edge there. And again, right where it comes to the edge, I'm going to move. Watch this. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to move up just a little bit here and bring it around. You see that? And that right there is going to give my that little move that I just did there is going to give my shell a little bit of dimension, a little bit of thickness and volume. And that is a great use where we were just talking about earlier of this idea of overlap. See that the shell is in front of that, but then the shell comes from behind. And that creates a real nice sense of depth. And the last thing you could do, if you want, you could add a little bit of tone. You can add a little bit of tone to your shell. And when we add tone, the trick is when adding tone is to try and keep a even, consistent value going across, just like that. Versus you want to just take time and slow down. So you don't want your tone to be something like this. Yeah, you do. This is what you want. You don't want that. Smooth, even, going across. All right. Hey, John. Glad that you... Yep, you got it. Look at all those emojis. Good morning, my friend. Okay. Can I carry on to our next object? About, as we continue to take a look at spheres here, right? All right, let's take a look at this one. This terrain, oh, what do they call these things? I can't remember the name of them. Hey, what do they call like aquarium, but it has plants inside of it?
Terrarium.
A terrarium, thank you. All right, let's draw this terrarium here, okay? All right. Once again, I like to draw from my elbow counterclockwise. It seems that I get a much better round circle when I'm doing that. You might find it different, but for me, that's how I roll. this terrarium has a little bit of a flatter base. And then our opening, again, is going to be top right. All right, let's take a look at our base here. And let's add some of these stones. And since we're going to add a number of stones, and they're going to be behind others, let's draw the one that's closest to us here first. Sure. See you guys later. All right. We got this, the stone is behind there, so we got that. Do you recommend using surface lines in areas of shadow? Yeah, I would. I would definitely. Absolutely. You could actually, when you're putting your shadows in, you can, as you're putting your shadows in, you can put them in the direction of the shadow, and it will help not only create your shadow, but also create form. So absolutely. And then as far as like adding highlights go, you know, I do a lot of watercolor on the side. So the thing with watercolor is you don't put any color on your lights. You just automatically stop short of those. Watercolor is the opposite from oils, where oil painting usually you're layering, so you could keep your highlights to the very end and then put a dab of white, where watercolor you don't put any color where your highlights are going to go. I hope that makes sense. So I have found, and someone pointed this out to me, that I draw like I would watercolor. So, great question, Sharon. That's an excellent question. So when it comes to doing highlights when I'm drawing, I try and just keep the white of the paper there instead of coming back with an eraser. I hope that makes sense. Okay, Sharon, great question about surface lines and shadows. Surface lines can be used anywhere, okay? Anywhere on an object. If you're using surface lines where there is a lighter side, then you're going to want to use, when you put them in, you're going to want to put them in with a lighter touch. Versus if you get into the shadow side, then you're going to want to put them in a little bit heavier. That's such a great question. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm going to show you that example right now. Sharon has asked, let me just say this for the recording. Is there a difference between surface lines and shadows? So let me show you this example right here. And how we could use those. All right, so let's say this is the base of a tree, and I'm just going to do this sort of thing right there. Okay, so these are two trees. This is A and B. All right, both these trees, the canopy is casting a shadow on top of them. You follow? So if I was to draw surface lines here, and this is going to be in the shadow area, I might make these far more thicker. You see that? And then once I get out of the shadow area, I might make it much lighter. And now what will happen is once I go back in and add value, you see what I mean? So now with this tree, I've maintained my surface lines. They're both in the light area and the dark area, but yet I'm still maintaining the mass. I'm describing that. So surface lines aren't really used as shadows per se, but they can. It's really like we're just using surface lines to describe mass and volume. Here, let's do them the opposite here. So if I'm doing this way, and then I could come back into this, and again I'm creating my shadow, but this time I'm creating it by using surface lines, you see? And then where it gets lighter, I'm using less of them. So, that's such a great question. So you could see that, shadows created by a change in value. Surface lines, so shadow is heavier. Has to do with light source, yes. Surface lines don't necessarily have to do with the light source. True, they don't. And that's exactly it. Surface lines are only to describe form, okay? Surface lines should not be thought of as using to describe value or shadow, okay? We want value to be separate. Surface lines are details, are texture, okay? You could have texture on an object, whether it's in the shadow or whether it's in the light. And how are we going to describe that? All right? I hope that helps a little bit. All right. Wow. That was an awesome question. All right. I'm tired of looking at that terranium. Let's move on to something far more exciting now. Okay. Look at that. So here's a combination. Here's a combination of the last lesson we did and this lesson. Okay, so let's take and draw this in our let's draw this, and we will use surface lines, and I think you're going to find them to be very interesting as we do this. Okay, so the way that, let's start with our outside container, and then we'll draw the apples on the inside. And whenever I'm drawing anything that is a building or a cube, I always like to look at the corners first, all right? So I'm going to look at the corner that's closest to me. I'm going to change this color to be here. There. I'm going to look at that. In my mind, I'm looking for that. I'm looking for this, and I'm looking for that. That's the relationship that I'm looking for, okay? So let's start off with this point here. And I'm going to put this point in up there. Put further out, something like this. And then right there. Now, be mindful that this point is a little bit higher than that. You see that? And now we can just connect the dots here. Ooh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Beautiful fanning out. You see that? Already, I've got those dots in a great position that this is starting to fan out. And let's see how I did on the others there. That's good. Okay, that one looks nice too. And if you're not sure what I mean by fanning out, check out the link to go back to watch the video previous cubes, and I'll put a link. I'll add a link here that you can see that. Okay, let's drop a straight line here. Okay. Straight line there. Okay, let's send this back to the vanishing point. Again, all of these are going to be going back to the same vanishing point somewhere out there. So we want to start to create this fanning out, okay? And the same thing with this guy at the bottom here. Let's bring him. So these are all going back to the same vanishing point. Straight line there. Straight. I've actually, this line is straight up and down. This is slight. I've slightly angled this one and slightly angled this one as well. Just ever so slightly. Now I'm not going to follow the detail of this crate perfectly, and that's okay. I'm going just to kind of divide this line as best as I can in thirds. Then up here I'm going to divide this one in thirds as well. And now we're just going to play connect the dots. What's great about apple crates is they're made out of wood, so we can get away with it not being, it could be a little bit of wavy. And let's do the same thing in the back there. Let's divide this back line into thirds as well. And then drawing from my elbow, let's connect this. And I'm trying to pressure. I'm using light pressure here. Go ahead and get that first apple in. So that first apple is going to be, we're going to draw a sphere here. Maybe something just like that. And when you start to draw these apples, you might have the tendency to just crank them out, and then you lose concentration. But you've got to stay focused. You've got to stay focused when you're drawing these things, because then it gets all sloppy and you lose track of where you're at. All right. I'm going to add another one right there. Let's put, and I'm doing overlap. Look at that. This is the perfect scenario where we're using overlap. Sort of following the picture, but not really. All I want to do right now is to get a bunch of spheres in place. Go slowly. Take your time. I'll give you another 30 seconds here. Alright, let's take our first apple, this one right here, and I'm just going to put like a little, just a slight little concave. This will tell me where the top of it is, right? Oh, let me show you this concept really quickly over here. Let's just say that these are three spheres, okay? If I put the concave over there, okay, now we get a sense that this apple, the top of the apple is there. But if I move it down here, then we get the sense that it's coming down over there. And if I put it behind, then it looks like we're looking behind it. So what I've just done is I've taken the same shape, but I've placed the point at different locations, and that has automatically caused me to cause the 3D aspect of that apple to quickly change. Same thing with this, and I've shown this before in some of our other classes. If you have three faces here, and I put one face, look, right over there, that gives the sense that it's looking off to its left. That face is, you know, all of these faces, there's nothing, they're just like this right here. But because I placed that face on one side, it gives the sense that the thing is changing its angle. You see what I mean? I probably didn't explain that very well, but you get the idea. All right, so I'm just kind of going around here now and placing the where the stems are going to go at different locations to add some variety. So let's give these apples now a nice sense of dimension. So let's label these up here, A, B, and C. So on A, if I'm going to add surface lines to this, I'm going to want to go in this direction. You see that? On B, I'm going to want to go in this direction. This is going to give my apple a lot of volume in that way. And of course C is going to be like this. I'm not talking about shadow here. I'm only talking about mass and volume. So let's do that here. Let's maybe bring this guy around like this. Let's bring this guy around like this. Thing is, if you were going to paint these like an oil painting, as you're putting your pigment down, you kind of want to brush a little bit in that surface direction, and this is going to help create mass and volume as you paint by using surface lines. now I can come back in and add some tone to these. You can even add some stems if you wanted to. And the last thing, let's just say this area. Now we're going to add some shadow, value, or shadow. And we're going to say the front of our crate here is in shadow. The back end is also in shadow. And we could even come in and add some surface lines. Just go slowly when you add these. And we can even add some surface lines to this side a little bit. And Sharon, this is also adding some value as well. So don't, they kind of, it's kind of weird. I suppose surface lines can also be used to create tone simultaneously. So we will, you will get that sometimes. And I think that's going to do it for today. All right? Well, listen, my name is Kurt. I'm a dad who draws, and you've been watching our second lesson in Back to Basics. I'm glad that you tuned in. You guys had some great questions. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys later. Okay? Go out there. Make your day great. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.